What's up, YouTube? Zero here, and welcome to the place where gamers, witches, wizards, and superheroes unite. Today, we're going to talk about CDL action from week 1 this past weekend. I'm going to talk about the recap of the weekend and then some key takeaways for the teams and how they look going into week 2 and then eventually the major tournament. So first, let's talk about how it works. So there are two groups because this is pretty important into some of my key takeaways. There are two groups, and over the next 3 weeks, these teams are going to face each other in their respective group. They're only going to face each other once over the next 3-week period. So we can see this past weekend was week 1, then we have weeks 2 and 3 going into the major. This is how the major is seeded. In a perfect world, your team is going to be first in their respective group so they can get that first round bye in the winner's bracket. However, you're still hoping that your team gets one of the top 3 seeds in their respective group because you're still going to be placed in the winner's bracket. If you do not finish as one of the top 3 seeds, you come down here. So, if your team isn't really projected to do well, maybe you're happy with that first round bye at least as a number 4 seed, but really what every team is going to be aiming for at a bare minimum is one of the top 3 seeds. So being one of the top 3 seeds is going to be part of my takeaways for each of these teams. So now we've talked about how it works. Let's take a look at the standings from this past weekend and then go into some of the matches and key takeaways. As you can see, both the Thieves and FaZe took care of business. Both were 2-0 after this weekend. You have Toronto, who were able to take care of business, 1-0, and then you have a bunch of teams at 1-1, Rocker, Surge, Empire, Chicago Optic, and the Los Angeles Guerrillas. And then you have a few teams who were unfortunate enough to not get a win, but as you can see, Mutineers, Ravens, and Subliners only played 1 game. Then you have poor Paris down here at 0-2. So now that we've seen the standings, let's take a look at some of these games, and let's talk about this game first because I do have it up. The Thieves against the Subliners. So this was an insanely close game. The Thieves, as you can see, won only by 9 points in the hard point. They won by 1 game in the S&D, and they won by 1 game in the control. The Subliners made a lot of mistakes, and Mac had an absolutely awful series. If you are a Subliners fan, let's go back and look at these standings. You are 0-1, but you played the Thieves, the top dog in this standing in this group right now, very close. So you're pretty confident. You're thinking to yourself, okay, we lost, but we still have to face the Ravens. We still have to face the Surge. Those are 2 wins. If we can upset either the Rocker or the Empire. We just saw that the Empire were beatable. The Rocker beat the Empire, which I'm going to talk about in a second. The Rocker lost to the Thieves by arguably greater margins than the Subliners lost to the Thieves. Another game I'll talk about in a second. If you're the Subliners, you're still pretty happy. You're thinking that you can finish top 3. If you're the Thieves, you're sitting high. You're riding high. You're atop this group. You're 2-0. You were able to beat the Rocker. You were able to beat the Subliners. And you're thinking to yourself, we should be able to beat the Royal Ravens and the Surge. Even if we lose to the Empire, we still should be able to secure top 3. Obviously, we want to beat the Empire if we're the Thieves so we can secure that top seed. But if you're Thieves, you're pretty happy with the results of the weekend. So now let's talk about some of those matchups that I just mentioned. Let's talk about the Thieves Rocker and then Rocker against the Empire. We're talking about Group A right now. I'll go into Group B in a second. So we have Thieves against the Rocker, and we can see it's 3-1. Now, I know it's not 3-0 like the Thieves against the Subliners, but look at some of these matches. Over 50-point win against the Rocker on this hard point. 100-point club the Rocker on this hard point. So if you're the Subliners, you're thinking, hey, well, maybe we can beat the Rocker on the hard points. Now, the Rocker are a very good S&D team. The Thieves played them pretty close and then also won on the control. So From a standpoint of the subliners, you're thinking, hey, we might be able to upset the Rocker. From a standpoint of the Thieves, again, you're pretty happy you were able to beat a good Rocker team who were able to upset Dallas. Now, let's take a look at that Dallas game because that was pretty big from a Rocker standpoint. You lost to the Thieves, you were looking to get a win out of the weekend, and you put yourself in a really good position. Again, the Rocker lost both hard points. So if you're a Rocker fan, you're worried about the hard points, especially against teams that may be able to exploit that. Again, the subliners are probably going to be out for blood. The Surge, they did win a game. Again, it was only against the Ravens, but they did win a game. So the Rocker, again, taking both S&Ds from Dallas. Very good S&D team. They were able to take the control, not able to take the hard points, but overall, a great series from the Rocker and really a statement win. You're really excited if you're a Rocker fan. You were able to beat Dallas. You did lose to the Thieves. But if we go back to the league standings, you put yourself in a pretty good position. The remaining games that you have, if you're the Rocker, are the Ravens, Subliners, and Surge. You're thinking if you're the Rocker, you should be able to win those games. Now, again, Subliners are a scary team based off of how close they played the Thieves. So we'll have to see how they do going forward. We only have the one regular season game to go off of. And then the CDL weekend, they did get blown out by the Empire. But you have to remember that only a week before that CDL kickoff weekend, Zuma retired. So Diamond Khan got thrown into the lineup. They didn't have much practice with each other. So the team is absolutely getting better. This team may be pretty scary if they clean up some of those errors that they committed against the Thieves. But if you're the Rocker, I think you're in pretty good shape to finish top 3. Let's talk about the Empire. The Empire lost to the Rocker. They beat the Surge, so that's not really surprising. If you're an Empire fan, you're still feeling okay, but you have to be careful. The Thieves looked good. Subliners looked good. You can beat the Ravens. I think this is almost a guaranteed win from an Empire perspective. The Surge, you already beat. Don't have to worry about that. But again, the Thieves and the Subliners, I would be a little worried about both of those games because both of those teams have a potential to beat the Empire. I would be looking at the Empire maybe losing to the Thieves, maybe they could beat them. And the Subliners have upset potential. And then you have these bottom 2 teams that I haven't really talked about. I mean, they're not at the bottom. The Royal Ravens are. But I'm not too confident in Seattle to really win any more than the game they did against the Royal Ravens. Gunless had an amazing series against the Royal Ravens. Seattle only beat the Royal Ravens 3-2. So it's just something to note. I'm not really too confident based off of what I saw. Seattle got completely destroyed by Dallas. The Ravens lost to Seattle 3-2. Not really excited about what I saw out of either of these teams. So I'm looking at these 2 teams probably being on the bottom of this group. And the Subliners, Rocker, and Dallas fighting for those last 2 spots. And I think the Thieves, again, are in a pretty good position. They put themselves in a good position to be in the top 3. It's just going to really be a matter of how Dallas and Minnesota go from this weekend forward. So let's talk about Group B. And I'm going to get right into it. I know a lot of people are interested in the FaZe Chicago game. So I'll talk about this game. FaZe and Chicago Optic, or Optic Chicago, was an absolutely phenomenal series to watch. It was back and forth in terms of the match itself, but the search and destroys were not good from an Optic perspective. You can see I'm a FaZe fan, so I was very excited with the result. The first hard point, a close match, Chicago able to take it by 25 points. The second hard point, this was back and forth. Abizi had a huge 3-piece at the end of the game to allow FaZe to send it into that final game 5. These 2 games are I'm happy about being a FaZe fan. If you're an Optic fan, you're not happy and you should be a little worried. So the reason why I say that is before the season, I forget if it was Dashy or Scump. One of them was interviewed and they said, if we can get our search and destroy on point, we're going to be the scariest team in the league. We're going to be the team to beat. I forget who said that. It was Dashy or Scump, I'm pretty sure. And as you can see from this matchup, their search and destroy is not on point. You would expect that Optic, being as highly rated as they are, being one of the top dogs in the league, would at least play a closer series in the search and destroy than only winning one match. Scump in this first game did not get a kill. He went 0-6. In this game, Abizi did go off for FaZe. Again, FaZe had a very good search and destroy. Also in this map, Formal made a few rookie mistakes. So if you're looking at it from an Optic perspective, there are a couple of mistakes that can easily be cleaned up. Again, the rookie mistakes, they are just mind lapses. Those things are easily cleaned up. Players like Formal, Scump, they've been in the league forever. That's not something you're worried about. They don't typically make those mistakes. So that's not something you're worried about. But you are worried from a perspective of Chicago's not a very good search and destroy team, and they were exposed. If they lose one of these respawns, they're in trouble against some of the better teams. Before I continue going about Chicago, I just want to talk about FaZe really briefly because it is pretty easy. FaZe, you're sitting pretty. You're 2-0. You beat an amazing Chicago team. You did beat the Gorillas. That was expected, but that was the team you wanted to beat right there. You beat Optic Chicago, arguably the best team in the league going into this weekend, and you beat them. It was a close match, but you beat them. So you're sitting pretty, and you're looking at that number 1 seed. Now, going forward, you still have to face Toronto, who can upset you. They've upset you last year. You still have to face the Mutineers, who have also upset you last season, and they beat you in the CDL kickoff weekend. But you're still sitting pretty, and you're thinking to yourself, if you're FaZe, take care of business against Paris, win one of these games, and you're at least going to guarantee yourself top 3. You probably don't even have to win one of these games to guarantee yourself top 3, but you're saying to yourself, let's beat Paris, and one of these, we're definitely top 3. But we will hopefully be able to take care of business and beat both. But again, these two teams can upset FaZe. They've done it in the past, so you at least want to win one of these to put yourself in a position to be top 3. From a Chicago perspective, the same thing applies as FaZe, but you're a little on edge. Toronto and Florida still have to face Optic. Optic's win was against Paris. So if you're Optic, you're thinking to yourself, we need to pull out at least one of these wins. At least. We need to take care of business against Los Angeles, and we need to pull out one of these wins to guarantee ourselves top 3. Don't sit on Toronto or Florida. Both of them are talented teams and have the potential to compete with the big dogs. I wouldn't be surprised if during this group stage, if Toronto is able to beat FaZe or Optic. I would not be surprised if that happened. They already beat the Mutineers, so that was a big win for them to put them in a nice position to be top 3. Toronto can still lose to FaZe and Optic and still put themselves now in a top 3 position, depending on how Florida does. So you're pretty happy if you're a Toronto fan. You took care of the Mutineers. Chicago, you're a little uneasy, but you're thinking to yourself, we can still beat Toronto. We can still beat the Mutineers. It wasn't that bad to lose to FaZe, one of the best teams in the league. It's not a big deal. But again, what is more of a big deal in the loss to FaZe was the search and destroys. That needs to be cleaned up. if you are an Optic fan. You have to clean that up. If you're an Optic player, that is one thing you need to clean up, because if you give up a search and destroy to the Mutineers or the Ultra and they end up beating you in a control, then you're looking at potentially being upset. And that's not something you really want to do. So if you're the Mutineers, you're not too happy with that loss to Toronto. That was one of the wins that you needed. Now, if you're Florida, you have to upset Optic or FaZe. I don't see any way around it. You're Florida. You have to upset one of these two teams to make it to top 3. Paris, you should be able to beat. You can see Paris, lowly Paris down here at 0-2. They lost to the Gorillas and Chicago. But if you're Florida, take care of business against these two teams and hopefully upset one of these two teams. Because if you can't upset one of either FaZe or Optic, you're not going to finish top 3. Gorillas are happy that they got a win. Granted, it was against Paris. I don't feel good about the Gorillas upsetting any of these teams. They play decent against Paris, but only won 3-2. Paris is down here. We're beaten 3-0 by Optic. I'm not confident in either of these two teams to scrape together combined even one more win. I think both of these two teams are going to be the bottom of the pack. So look this upcoming weekend for Toronto, Optic, and Florida to be fighting for these spots right here. Again, FaZe put themselves in a pretty good position to where they should be able to secure a top 3 slot. So that's all I got for this past weekend. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. And if you did, again, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more CDL content. Let me know in the comments section who you think is going to win each of these two groups. Is it going to be FaZe and the Thieves? Are Empire and Optic going to make a comeback? Or are we going to have some dark horse winners such as the Ultra and Rocker? I'm curious as to what you think in the comments section. Be on the lookout for my predictions for this upcoming weekend. Well, until next time, peace.